Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about Facebook because Facebook is forcing some of their employees back into the office despite the risks of COVID-19. Now, here's what's going on. I found this absolutely interesting and a little bit troubling. It's coming from CNBC and some other sources, and here's what's going on. More than 200 Facebook content moderators from across the US and Europe have written an open letter to Mark Zuckerberg, obviously CEO and founder of Facebook, and urged him to let them work from home during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, according to this letter, which they released today on Wednesday, and it reads, and I quote, "We, the undersigned Facebook content moderators and Facebook employees, write to express our dismay at your decision to risk our lives and the lives of our colleagues and loved ones to maintain Facebook's profits during the pandemic. After months of allowing content moderators to work from home, faced with intense pressure to keep Facebook free of hate and disinformation, you have forced us back to the office." They also go on to demand that Facebook should maximize at-home working, offer hazard pay, and outsourcing, and provide quote-unquote real health care as well as psychiatric care. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, a Facebook spokesperson told CNBC that the company appreciates the work of its content reviewers and that it prioritizes their health and safety. They are basically continuously battling to keep their platforms free of questionable posts, photos, videos, and they have now been outsourcing a lot of that moderation work to companies like Accenture and CPL. And to quote the letter, which was also addressed to the Chief Operating Officer, Sheryl Sandberg, before the pandemic, content moderation was easily Facebook's most brutal job. We waded through violence and child abuse for hours on end. Moderators working on child abuse content had targets increased during the pandemic with no additional support. Now, on top of the work that is psychologically toxic, holding on to the job means walking into a hot zone. In several offices, multiple COVID cases, have occurred on the floor. Workers have asked Facebook leadership and the leadership of your outsourcing firms like Accenture and CPL to take urgent steps to protect us and value our work. You refuse. We are publishing this letter because we are left with no choice. Now, I find this to be really interesting. And perfect example of this is actually in Dublin, Ireland. Facebook apparently forced all of their moderators to go back into the office and essentially work from the office, even though Dublin at the time was going through a high tier COVID alert, essentially ordering or recommending that everybody stay home. And I think this is actually a very interesting problem that we have here, because content moderation is one of those things that Facebook takes very seriously and traditionally has only been done on very controlled computers within the Facebook ecosystem, meaning in their offices or their contractors' offices, primarily because what ends up happening with this is they see some of the most horrific things that people post, child abuse probably being one of the worst, and everything else. And so there have been reports over the years, I have talked about this before, regarding just the psychological torture that these moderators go through to try to keep Facebook as clean as humanly possible with this. And so for them, on top of this, now having the fear of possibly get infected, and as they say in their letter, they've actually had multiple COVID cases occur on the floor, meaning basically they're in a big bullpen content moderating here, and if somebody gets COVID, that could potentially infect everybody in the building. They are genuinely concerned. And so I can understand Facebook's logic for not wanting somebody to work from home and opening up what are criminally illegal items, because that is their job, to open them up, look at them, and then delete them, remove them, and possibly flag and report them to whatever the local law enforcement is for that country. But there has to be a balance with ensuring that the workers are safe. Maybe it's completely taking an office and restructuring it so that every single employee is 100% isolated and doesn't contact or touch anybody. They can make the space their own, whatever that is. Or maybe it does mean working from home, let's say on company-issued equipment that is highly monitored and highly regulated, to make sure that the employee couldn't copy that grossly illegal material out of there. But either way, this is obviously a very serious issue, and when most companies are having people work from home, even when they are doing very tough jobs that require a lot of controlled information, they are finding ways to make sure their workers are safe and not going back into the office. once again, I think Facebook is really looking at their corporate bottom line more than they are looking at employee health and safety. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing. Now, these employees may be asking for too much. They might be asking for too little. I'm not going to, comment on that because I'm not necessarily sure. But what I do know is they have a very tough job. I couldn't imagine waking up every day saying, great, I get to watch 8 hours of just absolutely horrific and nauseating content so that I can remove it, from Facebook. Only to have to now worry on top of that is, well, I'm also going to get COVID and potentially be really sick or worse as a result. So I think this is a really important thing to talk about. I think Facebook overall is in the wrong here. And even if they were having people basically put back into the office, they're doing it in the wrong way, in the sense that it doesn't seem like they're really taking protocols into account because they're putting everybody into, let's say, one space. And so, again, I could be wrong on that, but that's really seems like what it is. And given that I've done basically video after video or podcast after podcast on Facebook, regarding absolutely everything, that they have done that just absolutely ensures Mark Zuckerberg makes more profit over absolutely anything else. And I literally did a video in 2019 called "It's Time to Put Mark Zuckerberg in Jail," which was a half-hour video on that specific thing of just the god-awful things that they have done. This is just going to be added to the 2.0 version of that because this is seriously not cool. So that is your news of the day. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. And if you were a Facebook moderator, would you want to work from home? Would you even want to be a Facebook moderator? I'm curious to know what your thoughts on that and how Facebook is handling it. And so that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. I understand the irony there. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.